Good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Sub Chaos, welcome. Angela. JK Crochet, welcome, welcome. Melinda, good morning. I'm going to finish up this crochet portion here. Going to give everybody a second to jump in. Good morning. Let me know if you can hear the outside noise. I've got the window open in my room. Trucks are going up and down the street, and I don't want that to interrupt. So if you hear trucks, let me know. I'll have to close the window down. Betty Boop. Betty Boop. Welcome, welcome. Gigi, Miriam, Mama Hen. Okay. Right as I said it, one had went by, so hopefully you won't hear it. It should be far enough away. But we're going to finish up this crochet portion today. And then I'm going to show you how to cast on and make this knitted mug rug. We are going to shorten this mug rug up. I did just throw some stitches on the knitting needles to prep this Tuesday morning prior to class. I did finish up with the fringe. I don't know whether I want to fuzz it out or not. I'll figure that out later. But I'm going to show you how to do these, which will show you knit stitch. The one I'm going to do in class today will be stockinette stitch. It'll be knit on one side, purl on the other, so that you can get to see the purl stitches. And of course, the other side, you see all your color changes and everything in here. Once this gets worked around a little bit and ran through the wash machine, all of these little ends here will bleed right on in. I never cut them all the way off. I always leave a little bit because they pull back in. But we'll be showing you how to do this as well. Hopefully my phone will hold in. I've been having some overheating issues. So hopefully we can get through this on a full battery. So I'm going to set the knitted one to the side. And we are going to pick this back up here. And let me see which row. I'm going to show you how to count the rows now that we've turned the corner on this here and started doing the decreases. You're going to start down in the corner and you're going to count the squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Then you're going to count the squares that go up the side. 13, 14, 15. So we finished up row 15. So row 16 is coming up from this end, and we're going to go ahead and get started here. We didn't finish up row 15. We just did these. So we have to go in here and put our gray square in for our steam, and then 2 of the maroon for our cup, and 2 of the cream to finish up row 15. So we are going to pick up that cream. And again, because we are changing colors, we are going to drop that cream to the front. Again, in between the loop on your hook and where you're doing your stitch. Let it lay right in between there. Conveniently, the maroon was left right there, but we don't need the maroon, we need the gray. So we have to drag that one up here. And we're going to perform our slip stitch with the new color so that we don't drag that cream, not even one little slip stitch up into the next square. I'm going to chain 2, and then we're going to do 3 half double crochets in the space where we did the join in that chain 2 gap that was created by the last row, or on the last row. I should have pulled that gray tighter before I did that. Let me pull those back out. That gray stitch. I didn't tighten up that string or something. Or maybe it's the maroon one. Yeah, it was the maroon one. We were fine to begin with. Alright. Go back in here and get that back up there. And then we're going to do another color change right into that maroon. And I'll show you that color change again. Now mind you, if I went to slip stitch these together to join them like you would. Thank you for the follows, guys. This gray stitch would be right up into the next square, unlike this here. No cream up into that next stitch at all. It stops right there. this would drag it up into the maroon that I'm getting ready to change into. So that's why we do the color change on the very last stroke of whatever stitch you're doing. When you do your very last yarn over and pull through, that's when you want to do your color change. So again, to lock this in here, gets locked in when we do our chain 2. We're going to go ahead and do our slip stitch. And you can see that little gray yarn is laying still right there, but once we do the first chain of the chain 2, it is locked in. Okay, now we're going to do 3 half doubles in that same chain 2 space where we just did our join. 3 half double crochets in that space. And then we're going to continue on to do the second square. Oh, you keep seeing crocheting lives now. Yeah. The algorithm will change it up for you, whatever videos you're watching the most of. And it's funny because there's a group of my friends that we tag each other with videos all the time. We've changed the algorithms on each other's TikToks because we're looking at other things that we don't normally look at. Oh yeah, I just started not but 5 minutes ago, Debbie. We're finishing up the crochet portion because we didn't get that finished Tuesday, and then we're going to continue on excuse me, with the knitted portion. Again, we're getting ready to do a color change now to the cream because we've completed these 2 here on our graph, and we're down to these 2 here on row 15. So we're going to drop our yarn to the front in between the loop on your crochet hook and where you're going to perform the next stitch. I'm going to pick up that cream, and because the cream is coming from this direction, we're going to make sure that we work over top of it when we do our half double crochets. Again, give this a little tug to tighten up that red stitch there that we're getting ready to lock down with this chain 2. And then the 3 half doubles in the same space. Now, you can see here that white string. Make sure you don't put your hook in here. You want to go underneath of that white string that we just stretched from over here and work it in. You can see my hook is underneath of it. I'm going to work my stitches over top of that as well as in this stitch. And again, that's 3 half double crochets in that space. And on a slip stitch to join into the next square in the chain 2 space. And we're going to chain 2. And then again 3 half doubles to finish off row 15 here. In that same space there is your join. And then we're going to slip stitch here. Now, because we are not making this any longer this way, again, these are where our decreases come in. I'm going to chain 1. Actually, turn your work as you would to crochet in any other crochet. And then you're going to slip stitch in the top of the first 2 half double crochets. The third chain, or slip stitch, is going to go right into that chain 2 space. Right there on the corner. Okay, now we've finished row 15. So I'm going to mark all those off to hopefully not confuse myself, which here lately has been very easy to do. Now row 16, we're going to be going up. So we have 2 of the cream squares we need to do, and we're going to end with the last maroon square here. And once we get all of this done, I'm going to show you how I weave in at least 1 or 2 of the squares before we go to the knitted portion, so you know how to weave them in so both look the same. Oh, you found it in real life. Oh, that's crazy. That's crazy, Jen. Yeah, I like seeing what everybody else is working on because I get inspiration. I get ideas from other things that I see, or I'm trying to figure out a certain edging or, something that I want to go with it, but I just can't figure it out. And sometimes I get that little aha when I see other people's projects. So now we're going to do these 2 squares for row 16. We're going to chain 2. And again, 3 half double crochets are going to go in to the chain 2 space. Now, Tuesday, I did tell you that you can do half double crochets. You can do double crochets for corner to corner. If you do double crochets for corner to corner, you have to start out with a chain 6 because you need that extra chain for the stitch height of the double crochets. In this one, we started out with a chain 5. And we need one more cream colored square here. So we're going to do our slip stitch and chain 2 and then 3 half double crochets. I'll pull some of this out. In that chain 2 space where you did your join. Now we're going to do our color change. Cream colored yarn comes to the front. Put it right in between there. Pick up your maroon color here and do your slip stitch. Okay, color change done. And we're chain 2. That secures that in there so it'll hold for when you come back to weave it in. I don't work over it because then you're surrounded by a different color square, and when you try to weave it in, you can see it. I will take this, run it down these stitches, and weave it in down here in this white, so this all stays over here. None of it gets trailed up this way trying to weave in. So, and I'll show you that here. So we're going to do our last maroon square here. 3 half double crochets in the chain 2 space. Thank you for all the likes, guys. Now we have a color change. We're going back to a cream. So what I'm going to do is take this red square back. I should have looked at my pattern. I'm going to work over that cream color yarn here so that I could bring it up here so I have it to use when we come off the steam on the back side. So I'm going to take this back out, back to my chain 2, and we are just going to hold this right here, and we're going to work over top of it with our 3 half double crochets. We're going to cover that right up, and then we are going to give it a little tug here when we get this square done. Okay. So that it tightens this up over here so that we don't have a big white loop hanging out here. And we have to make sure to do our slip stitch a little tight here. Now, take our cream colored yarn to the back, go in for our stitch. I got skeins of yarn running across the table. Don't need to pull a whole lot out because we're getting ready to cut it off. And go ahead and do your slip stitch with your color change. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do the chain 2 because our next one is going to be a cream color, and I'm going to cut this off. I'm going to leave at least 3 or 4 inches, so I've got plenty to hook into a sewing needle to weave in my edges or my ends there. I'm going to set this off out of the way so we don't need that anymore. And I'm going to go ahead, and because I have a red square right here, I'm going to go ahead and work over top of this red one here, and then I'll weave it in down here. So I'm going to go ahead and do my 3 half double crochets. That way I don't have to run it back down through the stitch. It's already down where I need it to be so that I can weave it in. And then again, you see how this gets elongated here a little bit. Just give that a little pull, tightens it right up. I don't know why it's hanging up there a little bit, but it's all good. We'll just leave that here so that when we get finished, we'll weave that in with this maroon block right here. Now we've done this cream block, and we have 2 of the gray that we've chosen for this. So we're going to put our crochet hook in here where we're going to do our stitch. things got a little loose over here, looks like. And we're going to pick up our gray. And we are going to have to work over the other cream here in just a minute, and I'll show you how we do that. Do our slip stitch and our chain 2. We're going to leave this one here because we'll use it to work down this way. And we are going to do our 3 half double crochets here. And we need 2. That really got wonky right there. I don't know what I did. I probably didn't put another square there, but we're going to leave it go. We're going to do our second gray square here. There we go. Slip stitch and a chain 2. And then 3 half double crochets in the same space as your slip stitch. Okay, now we're going to go, we got to pull that one back because, again, we should have worked over that cream, and I did make mention that we needed to do that and didn't stop to do it. All right, we're going to, the cream lays over the back side of the hook so that we can hold it right here on the back side of our work and work over top of it. So again, do our slip stitch. Sorry guys, you get to see the raw unedited version, hence live. Do our 3 half double crochets, and we're working right over that yarn there so we can hide it. Now we're going to drop this one, and we're going to pull this one just a little bit to take up the slack on the back side. And then we're going to do our slip stitch and do our chain 2 to lock that gray in. And then we are going to do these last 2 squares in this cream color. We're going to leave the gray right there. Did our slip stitch and our chain 2. Now we're doing the 3 half double crochets in that chain 2 space. Again, we're going to slip stitch into the chain 2 space of the next square. Chain 2. And then we're going to do the 3 half double crochets. And that brings us to the last little pixel in row 16. And we are back up to the top of our graph. Here we secured it with the slip stitch to the last square. We're going to chain 1, turn our work, and then we are going to slip stitch, 1 slip stitch into the top of the next 2 half double crochets from the last row, and then 1 slip stitch into the chain 2 space. I don't know if that's lint, yeah, or discolored yarn. I hate having a funky color in the middle of a solid color when you're working with your yarn. All right, we've completed row 16, and we're going to start with row 17, and 17 is going downward. And we've got 1 cream, and then we're going to have our last gray stitch. So we're going to carry this cream one along. So what I'm going to do, this one down here, I'm going to go ahead again and cut it off with a little long tail so that we've got plenty to weave in. And we are going to remove all of these extra distractions and strings hanging out here. So this one we will carry on down. We'll work over it when we do this square here. So at this point we're going to chain 2 and then 3 half doubles in the chain 2 space. And then we have our gray square. So cream color comes to the front. Pick up the gray color, give it a little tug, make sure you don't have a loop back there, and do your slip stitch. Now we're going to be working over this cream around that chain 2 space, and we're going to be working around that gray that's drug back there as well. Make sure you work over all of that. Got our chain 2, and we're going to do the half double crochets, and we are around everything. 3 half double crochets in that chain 2 space. And then we're going to take the cream back to the back again, go into our stitch, drop the gray because that's the last gray one, and we'll cut that one off too so it's totally out of the way. Do our slip stitch and our chain 2. And because we have a gray here and here, I'm going to work over top of that to help secure it in for our weaving end of that end. If I don't have those same 2 colors, you know, all that matching here and here, I leave it right here so I can weave it into that one that I just did. So now I'm going to take this one and I'm going to cut it off. So that's just going to hang out there now. And all we have to do is just continue to do the cream colored squares and decrease on both sides here. We're decreasing here on both sides and we'll have a square. Now, as I'm doing that, if anybody needs for me to keep up with the directions to do tiger stripes, oh, yes, it helps you with the color change. See, watching other crafters will give you that aha that you need to be able to work on a project that's just stumbling you up because you're not quite sure how to do it or what technique you want to do it in. So that's why I like to share. Thank you for the gifts, Judy. I'm looking back over some of these comments because I was pretty much, thank you, Lacey, for the follow. Amber for the follow. All right, I got everybody here. So, yes, this is corner to corner, and you do work it just like this, corner to corner. Striping is fun. Making out a pattern, I'll talk about making out a pattern as we finish this up. And again, if anybody needs to see this stitch particularly, let me know and I'll show you basically what it is. It's just, you know, a certain number of stitches done together in a certain spot to make a design. I like using the half double crochet because it's a tighter crochet. I don't like holes in my work unless it's meant to be lacy. So I always use a smaller hook than recommended for the yarn when I'm doing corner to corner, or, you know, I don't want that lacy look. Using a smaller height stitch will help close holes up. Smaller hook. The hook I'm currently using, I've got a massive tickle in my throat, excuse me. There we go, I think that helped. Smaller height stitches will help you close your work up too, but then you have to make sure that you add extra inches for the substitution of the stitch height. So you kind of have to be careful about doing single crochet instead of a treble crochet, because your project is going to come out way small. Anybody else new to crochet or new to corner? I'm turning my corner here, as they call it, or decreasing in corner to corner. Slip stitch up the side of the work in the tops of the half double crochets, and then the third one into the chain 2 space itself, and a chain 2 and 3 half double crochets in that same chain 2 space. And we'll secure those little pixel squares together with the slip stitch. Yeah, corner to corner is fun to do if you want to do a picture. And if you like doing stitches different than just single crochet all the time, excuse me, like you would do in a grafghan, a crocheted grafghan. This gives you, you know, a little bit more excitement to the journey of finishing a project. Each one of these little pixels can be a different color. Every single one of them can be a different color if you like. And I just got an aha, and I want to share this with you guys. I'm designing some blankets that look like color book pages where, you really couldn't color them, but if it was all done in black and white yarn, you could actually dye each individual section if you wanted to make it look colored, like a coloring book page. I was also thinking about doing some that are like halfway, with some colors going outside of the lines and everything else. And you could very easily design that up on here, and it wouldn't have to be blanket sized. You could do it tote bag sized. And you could have your kids draw you a picture, and you could take that picture and graph it out right here at Stitch Fiddle. Upload that picture, it'll graph it right out for you. Put the colors in the blocks and everything. And you could make your kids tote bags off the pictures that they drew. And they would just think that was just amazing. All different kinds of things you can do with this. Wall tapestries. You don't necessarily have to use the worsted weight yarn. If you drop down to a sock weight yarn and crocheting with the sock weight yarn, very, very beautiful tapestries that you could hang on the wall doing corner to corner. Because this stuff it's so cute once it's finished. And the further away you are from it, the better it looks. I like the idea. I love watching pictures form when I am crocheting or knitting, patterns, things like that. I think that's what I enjoy the most now. Thank you for sharing, Judy. But if everybody is okay with this corner to corner portion, understanding how to keep going with this, decreasing up the sides, I can stop finishing this square and show you how I weave in the ends so that you can't tell which is the right side and which is the wrong side. And I do weave all of my ends in on the same side. If anybody else wants me to continue with this, I will. If you've got the basic understanding, I will skip all of this here because it's pretty repetitive. All of my live classes where I'm doing instruction do get uploaded to YouTube. I do have to do this week's class and get that one and this one done today. So if you need it later, it's there. I'm trying to remember to link all these little patterns and everything. This I pulled off of Pinterest. And I think I did link this in my link tree. But when I go to YouTube, I need to put in there a link for the pattern and all. But when I get finished with the square, I pull all of these little strings to one side. Okay, normally I make the side that matches my graph, which is this side, my right side. This would be the wrong side because it doesn't match my graph. I just simply to have a standard. It doesn't really matter which side you do it on at all. But this side does look better down here than this side. So whichever side looks better, you can choose to make it your right side. But either way, it's not going to make a big difference. So what I do is I come right up the side where this string is coming through here, and I bring my crochet hook right up through, and I just pull all of those very carefully, trying not to catch the other strings, to the back side. So we're going to take this one here and run it to the back side. Some of these little white strings look like I should have pulled them a little bit tighter when I put this stuff together. Now we've got the front side all cleaned up of all of our color changes. So we're going to flip it over here. What I do, I use a pretty sharp needle. It doesn't necessarily have to be sharp, but it just helps me to have a little more of a pointier needle right now. Hopefully when my new peepers come in a couple of weeks, I'll be able to see a little better. You saw me, I just pulled this a little tight. What I do is I take these two fingers and I lay them right along the little ridge here where you've worked your stitches over right here. I'll lay my fingers on it just like this, just lightly. because I can feel when that's starting to bunch up, it means I'm pulling it too tight. If you happen to pull it too tight to where you bunch up, you know, this gets bunched up, just take your needle and space these back out like this, and you'll loosen that up. Okay, no big deal. But I'll lay my fingers on there and I'll grab that string and just give it a little tug. Then I'll put it on my sewing needle, and I'm going to bring it up close here so you can really, really see. Let me see. That might be too close, but we're going to try this out here for a second. I need to get some props, tools. I'm using the back side of one of my Dollar Tree buckets. Let me see if that doesn't bring it up too close. Oh, I got turtle doves in the driveway. Okay, that's good. Now I don't have to hold on to the work, and I can actually show you because you can actually see pretty good. See, the reason why I leave a lot is because my sewing needles are longer and I need to be able to get back here to get it in there. Now, what I do, I skip the first little leg, this first string right here, coming down, and I go over to the second two, and I run my needle through those. I don't go all the way through to the front. I stay pretty much to the back side of that stitch. Run it right through all the back loops that are back here. I pull that through. Don't pull it too tight, just like this. I'll take and mash it down. It loosens it up so it doesn't pull it tight. Now I'm going to pass it back the opposite direction, skipping again the first loop, because if you go back through where you just went, you're going to pull it back through the other side. So we're going to skip this first little leg of the stitch here, and we're going to catch the two in the middle, and we're also going to catch this one here that we skipped the first time. Okay, so we're under all three of those stitches now. Gently, again, I'm holding the stitch, holding the stitch so I don't pull it too tight, and if I do, which I did a little bit I think, I just take my needle like that, loosen it up a little bit. Hopefully I'm not talking too loud. I'm right up in the microphone. But you see here, there we have it. I'm going to put this back over here now. Actually, I'll show you another one. And then when I clip them off, I don't go all the way down, because when this gets washed or used, it's slowly going to loosen up a little bit more. Thank you for the gifts, everyone. Hessa Life, good morning. Amy, thank you. I'll leave just a tiny little bit of fuzz, okay? See that tiny little bit of fuzz right there? Just ever so little bit, because like I said, when this gets moved around, those fibers are going to rest, and that'll pull it itself in. If you cut them right off down to the edge, then when they go back in, they could pop out further on in. They still have the possibility that they may or may not, but then you've got 3 whole stitches this way and 3 whole stitches back the other way, and the friction of those going one way or the other. Good morning, Gnome. How are you? The friction will help to hold those locked in under there. Now, this one here, I'll show you another one. So anybody who's coming in, I always try to find where they are attached, where we did actually perform the 3 half double crochets, and try and weave it in there, because that's the easiest area to tunnel through with your sewing needle to weave in your ends. So again, I put that onto my sewing needle, and we're going to weave it opposite of the direction that it's in. So this one starts on the right hand corner. We're going to turn this square around. On the right hand corner of this square. So we're going to go in under here, but again, we're going to skip this very first loop right here, and we're going to go into the second one. Okay, and just work your needle in through there all the way through to the last stitch there. I'm going to see if I can't get this a little closer so you can see exactly where my needle is. And again, well, we split the first stitch a little bit, but we're not going to yank it all the way back through. No, your brain hasn't received the caffeine yet. The coffee. I got turtle doves running around in the driveway. Can't tell me I don't have ADHD. Ooh, turtle doves. I might have to close the curtain. Again, when I weave back through the opposite direction, I'm going to skip that very first stitch and catch the start of the second one. And I'm going to go all the way back through, even the stitch that I avoided on this side. So that way we're locked in there really good. Now I use this for blankets that I've made corner to corner. Loosen this up just a little bit here. Just take my needle and spread those stitches back out. Now, you can't even tell. Once I cut this off, this one looks almost like this one. You see this one here? Let me cut this off. Actually, let me leave the string hanging so you can see where it's at. And I'll turn it around so you can get a little better look here. You can see this one here where I've weaved it in, and this one here. You don't see much difference. So it really doesn't matter which side you weave these edges in if you can weave them in like this. Don't pull your stitches too tight. You know, your tail too tight when you're weaving it in. If you do, just take your sewing needle and pull those stitches back apart. And then once I clip this off, again, I leave a tiny little bit of fuzz. Oops. You see here, just ever so tiny bit of fuzz. That'll work itself back in up underneath it there. Might have left a tiny bit more than normal, but it'll work itself right back underneath it there and you won't see it. Then you don't have to worry about it coming back out. And I'll show you just in case, because I don't want to put another pair of scissors up there again and cut it, because I'll cut my working yarn. Just take and go like this. And that little edge is almost gone, just a little fuzzy. Right there. If I showed it to you this way, just a tiny little bit of fuzzy. Right there. And it's all worked in. And you can't really tell a difference from this one doesn't have anything woven into it. This one here, you can only tell by this little piece right here. That's it. You'd have to look really close. Oh, you're out of creamer. Crisis. That is crisis, crisis, crisis. Creamer is life in this house. Got milk. Sharon's got jokes. Oh, we got 2 ambers in here, maybe 3 ambers now. Be careful, guys. So this is corner to corner. I will be uploading both of the parts of crochet class this week. And, of course, the knitting portion we're going to pick up here in just a second. So for this knitted portion, I will let you guys know we need a size 8 knitting needles. And again, before we leave out for the knitted portion, I'll show you again the original coaster that I had made. I made this along with my mother. My mother, when she finishes a project and does the last stitch, she likes to be done with it. No sewing, no stuffing, no stitching together, no weaving in of ends. She likes to be done. So she did actually try this with me, and hers came out larger than mine. Of course, she used a bigger crochet hook, but not by much. And I do have hers over in the bag somewhere. But she says, I like it, but I'll never do it again, she said. But, yeah, both sides look exactly the same. If you looked at all the squares, and especially here, right around where these are, where the colors change, you're definitely going to have ends woven in. And I think there's, no, that's just where it got loose. But, you can't see, you can't tell the difference of where anything was woven in. All of them look the same. Even the ones way out here look just like these that are on the inside. But what you have to look really closely at is right here along this edge to see where there might be a little stitch where it pulled it in. If I turn it over on this side, you can't see where any of those ends were woven in. So that way, it doesn't matter which side. So, yeah. I always used to worry that one side was going to look worse than the other, and oh, I got to put a lining on that, or I got to cover that up. Nope. Just learn how to weave them in really good, and you don't have to worry. Okay, we're going to set this off to the side. The knitting portion, there was actually no pattern for. It's just a little mug rug. I did this up Tuesday morning, and it took me maybe 20 or 30 minutes pre-class to do this up. Got a little bunchy here on the ends. I don't know what exactly happened. And then it got a little more bunchy when I tied the fringe on. But hey, it's my mug rug. I like it. Yes, we used bright stripes in honor of home hooking. I don't know if she's in here, but good morning to you. Good morning, Nessa. Coffee bag, yeah. You can use corner to corner, and you can make any picture you want. The thing I like about corner to corner versus doing a knitted Grafghan, the color changes are easier to do. And knitting, I don't know what it is. It seems like when I'm knitting, I can't knit with multiple colors. I just can't do it. You have to carry all of those colors all the way through, because one stitch of one color would be a pixel. You know, it's not like crochet to where you've got 3 half double crochets and a chain 2 together. No, one stitch would be a pixel. And every time you had to change that color, there's not enough to secure one stitch in knitting without a whole lot of knots. And I don't like putting knots in my work. I've made blankets, I've made sweaters, I've made all kinds of things. Amigurumi, I have never tied a knot except for to finish off. Changing colors, I don't tie knots. Not even in my knit work. Oh, okay. She said she wasn't going to be on Discord, little booker. But that's okay. I had a pre-engagement. So I'm going to pull the colors up here for this. I did cast on like 22 stitches to make this one. We are going to shorten this up a little bit, because even with my large coffee mug, I only need about half the amount of stitches. So it's going to be a lot easier for us to get through with about, I would say 12 to 15 stitches instead of 22. Shrink it up by maybe 7. You could shrink it up more if you wanted to. But I wouldn't shrink it up too much more than 7, because your cup's going to be sitting on these little, excuse me, fringy knots. So we're going to move some of these colors out of here, because I have a bunch of tiny little balls of color, because I had to break apart bright stripes. And I can't have them all flopping around in this yarn bowl at the same time. They're really not up. So I'm going to have to swap them in and out. Swap them in and out. And these balls are only about this big. You can actually, I could have actually put them on bobbins, but I don't have any. I could have done cardboard. Didn't feel like it. So we are going to, in my little yarn bowl that I hand painted a long time ago. Yeah, 2018. So I enjoy all kinds of things. All kinds of crafts. No, they just come back from camping. They just came back from camping. I'm going to show you the long tail cast on. Darn it. I don't know if allergies are acting up or what's going on with me this morning. The cut end of the yarn is going to drape over your thumb, coming towards you. The other end going towards the skein or the ball or cake, whatever you're working with, goes over your index finger. You have to pull a long tail. Hey girl, yes, we was talking about you. I got a mug rug. We did a mug rug in honor of the bright stripes. But for the long tail cast on, you have a long tail, meaning extra yarn hanging off. So, yeah, Jess and bright stripes. She's going to have a whole bright stripe outfit. I don't know what she's making next for this outfit, but she's going to have a whole outfit. So because we don't have that many stitches, and there is a mathematical way to figure out how to do this. Some people say wrap your tail around how many stitches you need, and then you have to start up here because you've got your tail. I always fly by the seat of my pants, and sometimes I wished I never did. I just pull out a long tail and start casting on stitches. Because I did the Ronald Weasley blanket, I do know that 30 stitches from my wrist to my elbow with worsted weight with a length of yarn like this, that'll give me 30 stitches. So we don't need that much. Oh, Force Fest 2024. Yep, we're going to have to get some photos. Get the hype going. Get the hype going. So we lay the tail end across the thumb, the end that's going towards the ball of yarn on your index finger, and then you gather the two up in a triangle, and I hold it like this. So it looks almost like a little slingshot. Okay? Take my knitting needle. Of course, these are double pointed needles with a little topper on them. We use what we got, right? You're going to put it down here in this space between your hand and the yarn, and you're just going to twist it around. Just take that needle point and make it point upwards, the opposite direction that you put it in. You now have one stitch. I'm going to move this out of the way just a little bit because this is fading in with all of that and you can't see. You now have one stitch on your knitting needles. So to continue casting on, this is just for teaching purposes, so everyone knows where the needle is and where you're supposed to take it through to pick up more stitches. There's a turtle doves again. Oh, little booger's fat. I'm sorry. I love my birds. You're going to go to the meaty part of your thumb, and you're going to run that needle up your thumb. And as you do that, you see it's coming behind that one strand of yarn. I'm going to secure that with my finger, go over to the pad on your index finger and run the needle down your finger. It goes behind that other string. I'm going to secure that one again. Then I come over to my thumb, run that needle back down the thumb, which it goes back through the original loop that you went through. You can let go of your thumb there, still securing everything underneath your opposite index finger. And then just snug it up. You don't want to make it super duper tight because you want your stitches to slide up and down the needle. If they don't slide, you're going to have a hard time doing your second row. So if you're new to casting on, always make sure once you get that second stitch on there that it'll slide. This will save you a lot of trouble later. Again, now we have 2 stitches on there. You're going to go to the meaty part of your thumb here, up your thumb, over to your index finger, down your finger. You see we're going back behind, and secure that yarn there with your index finger here. Then come over to the pad of your thumb and run it back down your thumb. Secure everything. Drop your thumb out of the loop. Thumb comes back down here and catches this one and just snugs this. Just this one. You don't have to pull on this one back here. Just this one right here. Okay? Now we're going to do a few more stitches here, and I'll do it a little slower. If anyone needs to see that in a little bit more detail, I can slow it down again. And after you get it, it just pretty much becomes one fluid moment, or motion. Not moment. And you really, just for teaching and showing everybody where my hands are, where the point of my needle is, what string I'm going behind, all of that. I'll do about 5 more. And here is 15. I like to work over my ends as I start so that it helps to start weaving them in. I like to have a little bit more than this left over, so I'm only going to do this on a couple of stitches so that I have this to work in opposite directions. Hey, Brooks. I didn't see you sneak in here. I am right-handed. I'm sorry, SL. I'm just steady talking and not paying attention to any of these. Yes, I do love the look of knitting. Good morning, Samantha. How are you? Yeah, sometimes I cast on tight. You know, when you're casting on, I always tell everyone to come back past this bevel. That way you get the true size of the needle. I got jokes this morning. I didn't tell a joke. Oh, you guys ought to see me working on my sweater. When I do color work, I knit with both hands. One color in one hand, one color in the other. I can't do color work with them in the same hand. My brain will not let me function and do it. So I'll have to go live when I'm working on my sweater, but I can't talk much when I do that. So after we do the cast on, I like to work my end in for the first couple of stitches, and I'll show you how I do that for knitting. Doesn't make it bulky. People say, oh, it's going to bulk it up. You're going to see it, and never have. And when I change colors and like I get to the end of a skein and I need to add another one on, I do it the same way. I knit with 2 strands of yarn for about 3 or 4 stitches, the new and the old. And then I just drop the old and keep going with the new. Now for this end, I've got my tail end plus my working yarn, and I'm going to work a couple of stitches in knit. What are we talking about here now? Yeah, she's expanding her skills. She went whale making crazy, and then she went bucket hat crazy. I'm waiting to see what she does next. But to perform a knit stitch for everybody who's new, and we're coming right off the cast on, you do not count the cast on as a row. Your first row is always the row after the cast on. It doesn't count towards your row count. Yeah. I've got a whole box of materials over here for you, baby girl, and I'm sure you're going to take a few more when you come up tomorrow. But you go to the right, or to the left of the stitch, to the left of the stitch. You're going to put your needle through the little tunnel that's made by that yarn wrapping around your needle. Your yarn is to the back side. This would be to the front. So your yarn is to the back. Counterclockwise wrap your knitting needle. Pull your stitch through. I'll tell you a little more detail on that pull your stitch through on the next stitch here. Again, we go to the left side, in through the stitch. Counterclockwise wrap. For new knitters, I try to tell you I put tension on right here. I'm holding it kind of funny because I've got 2 strands and I can't hold it like this and hold tension because that string's a little short. So I hold my tension here. I keep this needle here in contact with this one as I come down under. See, I'm always touching and through that stitch. Once I get through that stitch, I let go of my tension so that I get the right size loop on this knitting needle. Okay? Then when I go to perform the next stitch, I go back down. You know, the work slides back up your needle again. Make sure you're not pulling at this point, because if you are putting your tension on here, you are going to tighten this loop up that you just made. Okay? Still really loose. You know, when I do my wrap around, I'm going to leave this one hang. So I'm When I do my wraparound, I'm still really loose. I do not tighten it up until I feel it drop down in between these two needles. And as I'm starting to come down here, I can feel that little click when the needles drop off the edge of the yarn. That's when I put my tension on, because I know I'm not going to super tighten it up, which will tighten the one up behind it. And again, when I come through, I let go of my tension here so that I can get true size on that stitch. I try not to perform my stitches way up here like this, because then you're definitely not getting true size. When it slides back on here, you're not really stretching this stitch. You're stretching this one that you did on the last row, because that stitch will stay super, super small and you're going to stretch this one. So always make sure that you work your stitches back past this bevel. Put your knitting needle in there far enough that you're past that, that you're actually making your stitches in the appropriate size. And all I did for this mug rug was knit rows across. I did 2 rows of each color. So I'll do 2 rows of the black, and then I'll change the colors. So every 2 rows I'm changing colors. I did 2 rows because if you do 1 row, then I'll flip this other one over here in a minute. Got to the end of our row. The cast on row always seems to be a little fiddly for me because there's nothing really to hold on to underneath, and it takes just a little bit longer for me to do the first row. The next rows I can fly right on through. I did 2 rows of each color simply because if I didn't, I would have this on the front and the back. Now, mind you, if you want this look on the front and the back, you can do a color change every other row and you will have this effect on the front and the back. And that's just because a knit stitch is a purl stitch on the back side and you get these little pearly dashes. You don't have those over here. So if you want this look, do your color changes all on the same side, which means every 2 rows you're going to do a color change, or every 4 rows, or just make sure that this is the last row you do. When you flip it over, you're going to be looking at this side when you do your color change, not this one. We got some conversation going on here. Do-do-do-do. Already at what point? What you talking about, Brooks? So on this one, I did knit every row, which gives me garter stitch, which gives me this look. For this one, I'm going to also show you the purl stitch. Now we've just knitted all the way through this one. I am going to do another row of just knit on this edge, because if not, when I get done with it, it's going to roll up like this. So I'm going to do one more row of knit, and then when we change to these other colors, we will do what they call stockinette stitch, which is knit 1 row, purl the other row. Your string always gets long between your needles. That has to do with tension. I'll show you that now because I'm going to do another knit row. When I'm doing knit, I always work in the upper 1.5 inches on both needles. I don't work any lower than that, and it's always right here. My needles are in an X or a T, depending on how you hold your needles. Going in to do my knit stitch here, you can see I'm always right here in this little space right here. If you were working, where you're doing all of this, you are going to stretch these stitches in here, because this disrupts your tension. What it actually does is it pulls the ease in between the stitches on both sides. So these stitches will tighten up, but you'll have a huge stretch here. Okay, so knitting, you're only ever working, and you can see right here, I'm in this space. And if I could put a little box there around where I'm working, I stay right in this area here on my needles. Everything is right here. If you're having to stretch like this to come back here, this is too far back on your needles. You need to move this up here. Now, what they don't teach you when they're teaching you how to do these stitches is what their hands are doing. Okay, and I'll show you that. This will help you a whole lot with that tension. These two fingers down here are holding this hook, and this is kind of pushing them into these fingers. So I'm controlling this needle here with these fingers. This here controls my stitches up and down. This keeps them from falling off the needle right here. Okay, over on this hand, it's almost a reverse. I've got my tension here, also needles here. Okay, so tension, needles. I can hold the needle here too, or like this. So I've got tension, needles, control stitches. Okay, so I always have control of these stitches. I don't have to worry about these falling off because I'm holding on to them. My thumbs are supporting here, moving stuff around. When I go in to do a knit stitch, I've got control of that stitch here, this one not falling off because I'm holding my tension. As long as I hold this tension, it's not going to fall off that needle. So when I'm coming over here to do this, I am holding a little bit of tension. You see my thumb here. It's also holding this back here. So I'm always in control of those stitches. When I go to wrap my yarn, this finger and this finger are holding all of my work. Stitches, needles, everything is being held right there. So I can let go and be secure in knowing that this isn't going anywhere. When I wrap my stitch, then I'm grabbing everything back. Okay, tension to hold these stitches on this side back. Still, I've got control of everything here. Thumb here, thumb was over here. I have control of everything at all times so that I don't have to, do this, that, or the other. Is my camera flipped? Yeah, it's the same for the left hand. If you work with left hand, okay, my tension, my knitting. Again, this is a little difficult for me. I'm looking through the camera view, but I can do this when I'm doing color work, and I can fly because I have another string over here in this hand, and I'm working both sides. But for left-handed knitting like this, it does slow my process down, but I can show it this way. I can't. Yeah, my tension is really, really tight now because I'm not used to not having this over here with the other hand. But yes, it works the same either side. I've got control. Always, always have my hands in control of the top two stitches, no matter which way I knit. That's the only difference between knitting and crocheting, having to keep control of all of these live stitches. And really, if you just function on these top two, you don't have to worry about all of these, because if these top two aren't going anywhere, none of the rest are either. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up this knit row, and we are going to do a color change, and it's also going to be another knit row. The second row of that color will be a purl, so I will be able to show you the purl stitch. Okay, so we're going to do our color change now. Yeah, the tension will change from one style to the other. My crochet tension, if I don't pay attention, I just can't mindlessly crochet like I can mindlessly knit. I mindlessly crochet, I start out with something that's this wide, and even though I've got the same number of stitches, it starts going like this because I'm getting really relaxed in my tension and I'm just going along. It's happened. And I've had to pull out rows and rows and rows of work because of it. So when I do my color change in knitting, it's almost like, and I'm going to be carrying this black yarn up because I'm going to be using it on every other color. So I'm not going to cut the black off, but after every other color here, I will snip it off after we fasten it in. This is really going to confuse a lot of the new people, but this is how I fasten in my new yarn and secure the old yarn at the same time. So I'm going to take this one out of here, and we are going to go ahead over to this little purple one, put that one in the bowl. All right, what I do is I fold my yarn back over on itself enough to cross over 4 fingers slightly spread, which is about just like this. And I get a hold of the loop up here at the top. That becomes my next stitch. I put it right up top there. Now, for those of you that do color work or Fair Isle, this might look pretty familiar. I'm going to be knitting with both hands. I take the yarn that I'm not going to use anymore. I lay it across the top of my needle. Weaving Steven, who is that? Thank you for the follow, Amy. Now I'm going to go ahead and I've already put this on. I shouldn't put that on there first because it's not going to work. Put the yarn that I'm not going to use for this row across the top of my working needle. Put my stitch on there. And I'm going to go ahead and perform that stitch. And I'm not going to get the black yarn. I'm just going to get the purple yarn. Because I laid it across the top of the needle, it's going to be hard to see with this black yarn. When I go to do this next stitch, let's see if I can show it to you. This black yarn right here, because I put it over top of the needle, when I go to do the next stitch, that purple is going to lock the black down underneath. Okay, so, Stephen West, yes, he's the one that makes all those sweaters for the places that he goes to. Okay, now because I'm going to be using this, I'm going to carry it up the side, like I did with this one. I'm just going to carry it up these rows. So I'm going to drop the black yarn and just let it dangle. We are going to do another row of knit now. I want to do one more stitch where I've got both strands, my tail end and my working yarn. Okay, now we're just going to knit across this. If anyone needs to see the knit stitch performed a little more closely, because I'm trying to do this for time and I'm watching my battery level. I've been having issues with my phone. I'm getting a new one soon. I went through that other stitch. If anyone needs to see the knit stitch, please let me know. I'm going to be demonstrating the purl stitch here in just a minute. Make your own sweaters. Yeah, I went sweater crazy last year. I think I made my mother like 10 sweaters last year. But now, there we have our first row of purple. Now, we are going to do the next row in purl because I want to show you, this is garter stitch where you have these nice little nubbies. A lot of texture. There's ridges in there. I want to show you what they call stockinette stitch, where you knit one row, purl the next row, and it gives you a more flat look. Yeah, I know. Kayal, thank you for the follow. Yeah. And I'm getting older here, so I need a bigger screen with bigger print. They don't make those. So anyway, the purl stitch, unlike the knit stitch where you went to the left of the stitch to perform the stitch, the purl stitch, you start from the right and your yarn is to the front. Now, just to remind you, the yarn was to the back when we did a knit stitch, which is away from you. The yarn is to the front for the purl stitch. We're going to go in from the right and in through that little loop that's made by it wrapping around the needle. And your needle's going to stay to the front of your work here. When we did the knit, the needle went to the back. When you do a purl, the needle goes in through the front. Again, still counterclockwise wrap your needle and perform your stitch there. Push that little piece off. Again, in from the right to the left, counterclockwise wrap your needle. Okay. Again, I'm wrapping my needle. I'm holding tension on that yarn right here. as I come through, you'll see the little gap right here between the needles will start opening up. See here how it's getting, because I'm holding this tension, the needle will pass straight through, and I let go of the tension so that it gets proper size past the bevel. Make sure you drop your stitch off after you've completed it. Hopefully my camera's staying not fuzzy, because I have new glasses coming in a couple weeks, and I hope I'll be able to see better. Everything checked out good. Eyes are healthy. I still don't understand why I got double vision when I'm looking at letters. But they're hoping that the prescription fixes it. I doubt it, because new prescriptions over the past, 5 or 6 years haven't fixed it. All right, now we did a row of purl stitches. Now I'm going to be able to show you the difference between what a knit stitch looks like and what a purl stitch looks like. And it might be a little harder to see it on this side, but underneath of the stitch here that's on the needle, you can see, and hopefully I can keep the light right, it looks like a V. That is what a knit stitch looks like. Right there. Now, a purl stitch looks like this here. It's got a little dash, what I call a dash right here. At the base of the stitch that's on your needle, you have a dash. That is what a purl stitch looks like, and at the base of the stitch for knit, it looks like a V. Okay, now because we've done 2 rows in this purple, we're going to change back to the black color, which we still have hanging here. So what I do, because I had, the purple was no longer my working yarn, and I should have caught that on the last stitch. Let me go back 1 stitch here and catch that the way I normally do. When I perform the last purl stitch, what I do is lay that over top of there just like that, do my purl stitch right over top of that, and that brings that black stitch, that black yarn, back over to here when I drop this off. Okay. On the front side, we are going to go back to working with 2 hands. All right. And we're back to the knit. Okay, so we're going to put that in there. On the left side, go in through the loop into the back. We're going back to this black yarn. Again, we're going to lay that purple right across the top of our needle. And if you watch, when I wrap this, the black is going to go down past the purple. See here? So that when I bring that needle through, all we get, you see how that gets pushed to the side there, the purple? All we get is the black stitch. Now, the purple yarn is still laying out here. It's not attached in anywhere. See it here? But when I go to do my next knit stitch, you see how the black yarn lays over the purple yarn? Locks it in there. Now I'm going to do 1 more stitch to where I lay the purple over top. Do the black stitch there. Okay. And then 1 more stitch to where that lays it over top. And now, again, I always cut it off to where I've got 3 or 4 inches for weaving in. I like to put it on a sewing needle. Trying to weave in with the crochet hook anymore doesn't work too well for me. I used to be able to do it with a crochet hook. Now it's just a little too hard. So, again, we're going to do a row of knit. And those are just going to hang in the back. Again, if you need to see, anybody need to see the knit stitch described a little bit better? What does the knitting gnome need help with? Oh, we've done a row of knit. And after I do this next color change, I can show you the difference in garter stitch and stockinette stitch. Good morning, Karen. Yes. Yes. Everybody's welcome. Whenever you can come, everybody's welcome. Now we're going to do a row of purl in from the right to the left, and we have our yarn to the front. Counterclockwise wrap. Drop your stitch off. Good morning, Nani. And we're doing a row of purl here. We'll have our second row of the black stripe, and we'll go on to the next color, which is kind of like a fuchsia color, looks like. That's what we did in the other one. So we'll stay with that color pattern. Boy, I tell you, the weather has definitely changed. We've got 73-degree weather out here after it's been like in the 90s, and this is like 70-degree fall weather. Now, you can see here our mug rug is looking a little different. Okay. We did shorten it up, and it is going to look a little different when we go to do definitely our fringe here on the ends, because our stripes look like they're going in this direction because of the V's. It's going to give a little difference. But knitting every row gives you this neat little ridgy, lumpy pattern, because every other back side of the row is a purl row. And the purl is nothing but the opposite of a knit. So this is garter stitch. This here, you can see it's all nice and flat. This here is called stockinette stitch. Now, funny thing about this is stockinette stitch here. When you turn it over to the other side, and you see every row looks like a dash row. This is reverse stockinette stitch. 107, yes. Are you out in Arizona? Yeah, brain bumps. Especially when you do stripes like this. Yeah, brain bumps. So all I did was continue on with color changes. I did knit every row on this one simply because it's just quicker for me to knit every row. Now we're going to do another color change here because we're on the knit side of our fabric. And we are going to the fuchsia color. Again, I just fold the yarn back over on itself. Take that little loop there and put it on my needle. Again, the black was put over the top of the needle at the beginning because we're going to carry it. And this just kind of locks it in there. Holds it loosely. It still, has to be snugged up. And we're not going to do this another time because we don't have to work it back over that way too much. We're going to do another stitch with double strands of yarn because that's part of my weave in. I'll let that black go. And the other tail string there. And we just knit all the way across. Again, go to the left of the stitch, in through the loop, counterclockwise wrap your needle, pull your stitch through. My fingers are all doing something. It's like a little machine here. I can describe actually everything. Y'all saw my hands are back here holding onto this. These are controlling these stitches. These are controlling these stitches. And this is holding my working yarn. A lot of people don't teach you that when they try to teach you how to knit. And you need to know how to hold your work. Holding your work is the most important part, and there's not one absolute right way. It's whatever is comfortable for you. But you do have to learn how to hold it, because if you don't know how to hold it, it's hard to do it. That's what makes it look easy. Yes. This here, oh yeah, you know that gnome. I can't see the faded out names. It's terrible. They're so fuzzed up together. Looks like lint above the comments is so fuzzy. But yeah, hopefully That'll change. But, yeah, we were talking about knitting. And the bumps. And I lost track. So we're knitting on across. The next row, we're going to purl, which is giving me this flat, nice flat, and you can still see the texture of the knitted stitches. So this is definitely going to change the look of the mug rug. Definitely, definitely for sure. So we're going to turn our work here and get everything ready for this row. This is a purl row. Again, in from the right to the left. Counterclockwise wrap. And work your way across. Looking for your pink gnome icon. I cast on 15 stitches. 2 rows of each color. Yes. The one that I demoed, I did 22 stitches because I just was, it was 7 o'clock. Class starts at 8. I'm trying to whip these things out as fast as I could. That other, for the crochet portion, the one that I used for my demo, this one here I made a long time ago. I used this to teach my mother how to do corner crochet. She said, it's nice, but I'm not doing it again. So, thank you for the follow. See how you are. Now, we're going to change back to the black yarn now. And I still didn't grab it again, but I'm not going to worry about it because there's a right side and a wrong side on here. I'm going to take this up here so that I can start the weaving on this. And I'm going to take that out. Put my black yarn back in the bowl. Again, the fuchsia yarn lays on top of my knitting needle. Do my counterclockwise wrap. And again, you see, it goes right behind there. All that does is allow me to lock that in on the back so that it doesn't come loose. You see here, it's still wide open, but when I go to wrap, it's going to latch it in underneath of there. You can see here, it's actually coming out from over here instead of over here where we ended it with. So it locks it right back in there. And then I can go ahead and cut that one off. Again, I leave 3 or 4 inches for weaving. Move that string out of the way. And then we are just going to knit across and purl back across. Again, anyone new that needs to see the knit stitch performed a little more closely, I hope I haven't missed you if you said already, because there's a lot of interaction in here today, which I love. I love it. And these you can make up in sets of 2. If you're making them up for couples, you can make them with feminine colors and masculine colors. Or if they have a theme color, you can use those colors. This can be used as well to make little crossbody bags. This one would probably be big enough to put a cell phone in. You just make it long enough to cover the front and the back of the cell phone, and then fold it up like this and seam the sides up and attach a handle. If you want to make it to where it has a little flap, you make it 3 times the length, and then you can fold up a little flap and have a little flap to fold over. There's all kinds of things that you can do with this without a pattern, knowing how to change colors and decorate things up a little bit. This you can also put on a graph, just like there was a graph for the coffee mug. You can graph this out, chart it out before you do it, and you can have it to where you can write people's names in the stitches with different colors. This is worsted weight yarn. It's actually Red Heart Bright Stripes. I've actually broken down the stripes so that I can use the black and all the colors that are in the bright stripes to make this little mug rug. It's a coaster you can set your cup on. I have other crocheted coasters that are done in worsted weight yarn, acrylic. I I don't have any rings on my tables, but then again, I don't have the expensive table. So, you know, if you want to use these on an expensive table, I would recommend cotton. I would recommend putting, you know, a little cork under the bottom, hot glue cork on the bottom to make sure that it was absorbent. Definitely don't trust them on expensive tables, but they are cute to make. Yeah. I think Sharon asked a question. Yeah, scrubbers and stuff. This is just to secure the yarn. You can leave your tail out there, but I don't knot my stuff. I don't put knots in there. So that tail hanging out would make everything else go loose. So I just secure it up underneath of there. Yeah, the tails that I'm cutting off here on the edges, I could use them as part of my fringe, but then it would be an extra, you know, and I like to have, there's 4 little strings right there. I would have 5, and that would make me feel some kind of way. You know, and then I wouldn't have 5 over here, and it's hard to put 5 over here, so it wouldn't be symmetrical. So, yeah, just little quirks of a long-time crafter. That's all, Sharon. Yeah, just my little quirks. And then now we're going to do another row of purl stitches. And probably I should have had a couple of garter stitches on each side of this because I feel that this is already rolling up. Little errors of things that I should have thought about before I actually planned this out, which you find as you go along. Hey, I should have done this instead of that. I should have put in a lifeline. I wouldn't be struggling as much as I am now. That one's for me and Minnie. You're welcome, Gnome. Thank you very much. I don't know why I said you're welcome. I meant to say thank you. Yes, if you know the answers and I don't answer right away. Yeah, these are needle stoppers on double pointed needles, if anybody's curious. I have about 12 inches of space between my camera and my desk, and these needles just work out very well. If I try to work on straight needles, 10 inches, I'm doing this all the time, and that bugs the heck out of me. So, yeah, I have to use smaller things for smaller spaces. So, yeah, I just put a needle stopper onto a pair of double pointeds, and I've got, you know, these are only, I'll show you here. They're not even 7 inches long. 6.5. So I got lots of space to work in. And I'm not banging against anything, so, you know, we're not creating knitting drum beats over here. Oh, yes, we live on the edge without lifelines. And I tell you what, I didn't put a lifeline in that blanket that Minnie and I are doing together, that Lord of the Rings blanket. I got to put one in there. I got to put one in there. So we're going to do another color change again. And this resembles, for anybody who does knit, catching floats with Fair Isle, with strand knitting color work. There we go. Let's throw out all those words because we don't know which one we want to use. I don't know if you guys can hear that farm equipment going up. I got the windows open because it's such a beautiful, beautiful weather day outside, even though it's a little gloomy. If you can hear them, please. Yeah, I do have circular needles that I work with too, but sometimes they're not all that great either, or I don't have a size 8 circular. Yeah, I do, right here, size 8 circular. But yeah, I like these. So we add our color in there, and I'm working with 2 strands just to secure it, and because I don't tie knots. I don't like knots. And we're just going to let that black lay in the back while we finish this up. And we're going to drop the tail in there too. Oh, make sure we're in the stitch and not behind it. I'm knitting straight across. And I might make this one a little bit shorter just for time today because it is almost 9:30 and I wanted to be off here by 10. And I don't know if my phone is getting overheated, and I don't dare touch it on the top of the screen because me touching this phone, I've went on apps that weren't even open, that weren't even on that page of the app screen. Yeah, it's acting really crazy. So again, we're going to do a purl row. Yeah, I have circulars. I have interchangeables. I have 3 different size cables. A lot of my upper sizes, like the 8s and higher, I don't have. A lot of them I don't have the smaller cords. And some of them with the smaller cords, the needles are so small. I can't, like these here, I don't have a lot to hold on to, and I over tighten on my grip, and it causes cramping in my lower hand and stuff. So, unless it has a longer needle that I can really get a hold of, I really don't like to use it at this point. I haven't done a whole lot of hats and socks simply because of that. But I've recently found that book where you can knit your socks on straight. Well, rediscovered it because I purchased it years ago, while I was still nimble enough in the hands to be able to do that kind of work. So I think I am going to shorten this for time. I'm going to do the black rose over here. It's going to be a smaller mug rug for me, but you can stripe it as many stripes as you want. You can make it as wide as you want. You can use this technique to make scarves and blankets, with the fringe on either end. This would make a nice warm scarf. I will tell you a secret about acrylic. A lot of people say that acrylic is scratchy. Some of it here lately has been scratchy to work with, I've noticed. And I don't know if it's the dye, because it's certain colors for me that I'm finding, and I don't know if anybody else is realizing or discovering this at the same time. But talking about the scratchiness, when you wash it, okay, I don't wash my stuffies. I do wash everything else, though. Blankets, wearables, baby stuff, always. But I put a little bit extra fabric softener in that wash, and those soften up so much. It's amazing. Yeah, it seems to be the red and the black color yarn. Yeah, some of them are softer. We were just noticing that. And I noticed that Walmart brand yarn, the Mainstay brand, it's softer than the Red Heart in every color. Now I'm doing a row of purl here, and I'm going to do one more row of knit to match my cast on, and then I'm going to show you how to cast off. I wanted to make sure to get the cast off in and to show you how I tied on the fringe, which should be fun because I had to put it on the edge of my desk to get the crochet hook underneath of there, but we're going to do it in the middle of the desk. It'll be a little more difficult, but okay. Now we're going to do this last knit row here. I think it is the type of dye that affects the feel of the yarn for sure, because there's no way that Red Heart is using a different brand of acrylic on the stuff that's scratchier. It should be all the same. One last row of knit here, and then we are going to cast off in purl. Always make sure you cast off in whatever pattern that you are doing. Knit purl ribs. If you cast off on the knit side, always make sure to cast off in knit. If it's on the purl side, make sure to cast off in purl. Now, we are going to go ahead and do our cast off. I don't know if anybody remembers the little weaving looms that they had back in the 80s and 90s where you could make the little pot holders with loops. It kind of resembles that same technique. I'm going to go in here because I'm on my purl row. We're going to do our first purl. The next stitch we're also going to purl. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to grab a hold of the first stitch we just did. I put tension on here to help hold the stitch on as I come to the top, keeping this needle touching this one as it goes down and around. And we take that first loop and put it over the second loop. We're going to come over here and purl our next stitch. Then I hold these here so I can push them around the needle so I can see that loop right there and just slide it. Oh shoot. I am going to have to go, guys, because the lawn people are here and I don't have the gates open. I got to get out here and open these gates up. I will be right. Well, I got to end the live. I will pick this back up at 11:30 today. I lost track of time. I'm sorry, guys, but I got to end. I will be back at 11:30 and we'll finish this up. I'll leave this sitting right here just like this so we can catch the cast off. I am so out of sorts today. But as usual, may all your stitch counts match and happy crafting.